I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship. Something stupid is coming out of his mouth. I don't know. Maybe it's just my age. He needs his vote pulled immediately. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name. Let's talk about something good about Justin Freck. What are you doing? Season of dreams. Ohio State, my guys, are either the best or the second best program in the history of college football. This guy is a bonehead. They love him. I question your judgment as an adult. I really do. I was a total hater. I know that for a fact, and I just don't get it. Get us back our sleeves and say, bring me that. That's the one I want. And welcome into Juck on College Football. Appreciate you so much for joining me. I was against the college football playoff expansion. I thought that personally for me, I wasn't against it for everybody else. I just thought for me, it would take away from some of my enjoyment. I thought that big games wouldn't mean as much to me because the upsets wouldn't mean as much. If you are letting all these teams in the playoff that didn't, in my opinion, deserve to be fighting for the playoffs, it would devalue what it meant to make the playoffs. Making a 4-team playoff was a huge deal. I thought that the 4-team playoff usually always got it right. It was usually pretty straightforward. Heck, I thought the BCS most years got it right. I love traditional bowl season. That's been blown to bits forever, though. And this would further just totally destroy bowl season. I didn't want this massive change. By about week 7 this season, I realized that I was still loving the regular season every bit as I always have. And part of the reason I thought that I wouldn't is because I thought that the general public would start saying things like, it doesn't matter, when you would see a team like Alabama get upset to Vandy, which previously would have been an unbelievable feeling to see that massive story, except for Bama fans. And you would get people like, it doesn't matter, they're still in it. Now, we had some people say that. For the most part, that was just as exciting as a normal one of those one-off upsets would be, right? Everybody loved it. It was a great story. Nobody was really saying it doesn't matter, though it doesn't, right? I mean, it does because it's one more conference loss, but it wasn't the coup d'etat. They're still in it. They've lost another game and they're still in it. But each time we saw them lose, and I'm not just singling them out, but you know what I mean. We're seeing teams lose games that normally would have knocked them out, and it still felt every bit as exciting. It didn't take away from my enjoyment. I thought that it would. I absolutely thought that it would. People also told me that I would be interested in games that between teams that we normally don't root for or that wouldn't pay any attention to, games like Pitt and SMU last week. And I would be getting much more of these games that I didn't get before. And my stance was, I'm not going to care about those games because I don't care who makes the last couple of seeds in the playoffs. They don't have a shot to win. All you're doing in that scenario is taking my interest from the teams at the top and putting it on the teams at the back. And that's not interesting to me. I was wrong about that too. I was totally jacked up for that SMU Pitt game last week. And unfortunately, it was a blowout, so it wasn't too exciting. But we got to know a lot about both those teams. And I'm really all in on the Big 12 championship race. Like I'm having a great time. I'm having a blast. It's probably one of the most exciting college football seasons ever. And it's not just because of the playoff. You've also got conference expansion, which has added more exciting games to the Big Ten, to the SEC, with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC and the new Big Ten teams. You've just added that many more exciting matchups. Not that those two, and you've also got the transfer portal with the ability of teams like Indiana to just like flip it around in 1 year. So all three of those things are just making for an unbelievably incredible, exciting regular season. And I'm absolutely loving it. And we already know. Now, I always said to myself, like, yes, the playoff is going to be amazing. I was worried about the regular season. We know the playoff's going to be amazing. The first rankings came out. And I'm just puzzled, man. And I'm not here to whine about who's seated where. What I want to know is the criteria. They always said that their main objective was to put the 4 best teams in. But did they always put the 4 best teams in? No. They put the 4 best teams in that were also the most deserving. For instance, Ohio State in 2015. They lost on a last-second field goal to Michigan State at home. There was some poor coaching in that game, some bad weather. One team not really taking the other one as seriously as they should have, forgetting Zeke Elliott. Did it expose Ohio State as not being as good as everyone thought they were? I don't think so. Not according to what everybody thinks is the big deciding factor now, power ratings, or what does Vegas think? That Ohio State team was still rated higher than every other team that made the playoffs, though they did not. They would have been favored over every team in the playoffs, but they weren't participating because they lost that one game. They were the best, but they didn't deserve it. And I like that. It was certainly one of the best teams, absolutely. Let's look at Georgia last year. They lose to Alabama in the SEC championship, wind up at number 6. And after that Alabama game, which saw some questionable officiating that might have swung the entire game, Georgia would have been favored against Washington, Texas, Alabama, Michigan. It was here or there, depending on where you looked. But they were power rated definitely in the field, right? Georgia would have been favored against 3 of the 4 of them in every single power rating and every single hypothetical Vegas line. Were they one of the best teams? Yes, they were absolutely one of the best teams. But they were left out because they didn't have the resume to match. They didn't earn it and the best. Like, you always had to have both of those 2 criteria, which made it so crazy that in the same year Georgia got left out as being one of the very best teams by every metric. That's the year the committee decided to throw in our face, no, it's just the best, and left Florida State out after going undefeated, winning the conference championship. So you had one of the most deserving, that's as deserving as you can be, right? Being undefeated in a Power 4 conference and winning the conference championship. You can't be more deserving than that. So one of the most deserving teams there was in Florida State and maybe the best team in Georgia, both were left out of the playoff in 2023. Just based on that, there's a lot of people that said it was time to expand. And I get that argument, though I think it could have been cleared up. I don't like the criteria of the mission statement being to the committee, like the best teams. That's who we're looking for. In my personal opinion, the concept has always been ridiculous. You may have an idea who the best team is. None of us know who the best team is. And in this era of college football, where we see rosters flipping annually, at least, even at the top, 20 players, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, each 3 of those teams lost 21 or 22 guys out of the program in the transfer portal last year. Out of 85 guys, we're talking almost 25% of teams at the top, playoff teams, they're losing 20 guys. Guys coming in, guys coming out. You look at teams that are just flipping over 50% of their roster. They're, more and more we're seeing teams in the 30s. Ole Miss. I'm not going to say Colorado, but I mean, I might as well. I mean, they're in playoff contention, right? But we're seeing it flip over so fast. You can't use last year as a barometer anymore. You just can't. But the committee went in there last week. What did they tell us by their decisions? Well, for one, they definitely have some brand bias. We've got everybody who's talking about Penn State, Indiana, right? I think there's a more glaring instance of brand bias. Let's look at 2 undefeated teams. BYU, number 9, undefeated. Miami, number 4, undefeated. This one stuck out to me immediately as much more glaring brand bias than the Indiana and the Penn State argument. So I went and ran some numbers. BYU's best wins, right? We know they got 2 ranked wins. Number 13, SMU, and number 19, Kansas State, who they beat by 30. Miami, number 22, Louisville. They beat them by a touchdown. These 2 teams, their Power 4 opponent records, Miami, their opponents' records, 26-26. BYU, 31-24. How about the point differential margin against those P4 opponents? Miami, plus 77. BYU, plus 76. Almost identical. except BYU has one more ranked win. There's absolutely no reason those teams should not be slotted right next to each other. And if you want to put Miami over BYU, whatever, but 5 spots, this is a clear instance of brand bias right here. Like there's no doubt about it. 100%. Miami's schedule, and I'm pulling both up here. Miami's schedule is not, they had Florida, the game against Florida. So you got the one SEC opponent, and I get it. Maybe that's the reason you might want to put them one spot ahead. But we know how bad that Florida team was early in the year. They were horrendous, looking a little better now, but terrible at that point in the season. We thought that was a really good win right then. It has turned out not to be. So we've established brand bias. As far as determining the best, some people think the answer is to go strictly by power ratings, predictive measures. I think all information is good information, but if you're just going by power ratings, you take away earning it on the field. 2023, for instance, with Georgia, they would have been in the field, but they lost to Alabama. Alabama would have been out. They had the same record. That doesn't make much sense, right? But the computers would have had Alabama out and Georgia in. But going straight by power ratings has an even bigger consequence. If you go straight by power ratings, you've got teams like, let's say, for instance, this year, a really popular power rating that everybody's heard of is the FPI, right? ESPN's FPI. Let's pull up ESPN's FPI and just take a gander at team. That's not the FPI. Let's look at team number 17 on that list. Team number 17 is USC. USC has 5 Big Ten conference losses. 5. And let's just say, for instance, they only have 4, right? Does that maybe put them up into playoff contention range according to a power rating? You see what I'm saying? So you certainly have not come anywhere close to earning it on the field. Look who they're ahead of Boise. They're ahead of South Carolina, who's been really good. They're ahead of Colorado, who's 6-2. Like, there has to be the portion of meritocracy. You can't go straight by power ratings, or you're going to have crap like that. Nobody wants to see that. All information is good information, but ultimately, there has to be incentive to win on the field and reward for winning on the field. I gave an example earlier this week. Penn State right now is power rated the 6th best team. They have a very small chance right now of making the Big Ten championship. What if they decide that rather than going balls to the wall to try to win the Big Ten championship, they would rather heal up for the next couple of games and just play the first half with their starters? They might drop 1. They might drop 2. But if we're just going off power ratings, they're not going to drop. It's not going to make them any less good. There has to be that incentive to win. It has to be based on merit as well as who we think is the best. Though I would like to get that verbiage out of it all the way around. So what is the criteria they're going to use moving forward? I just want a clear answer. And I want them to practice what they're preaching. If it's the best, okay, then it's the best with no resume. Or is the resume mattering? What are you going to do? And I just want it to be consistent. My personal opinion, the word best, all of that should be thrown out. I think it should be 100% you earn your way into a playoff. But I think the biggest thing that confused me or maybe irritated me about that show on Tuesday, Ward Manuel, who's chairman of the committee this year, AD up at Michigan, Reese Davis asked him how they were going to handle the losers of conference championship games. And it was clear Ward Manuel hadn't put a ton of thought into this. I don't know that they'd ever discussed it. He didn't seem prepared to answer the question. Not surprised. But he said something to the effect of, we're going to try not to punish someone, but we're watching. Now, I think there should actually be something that is in the guidelines here that specifically states a team playing in a conference championship cannot be jumped by a team that did not play in a conference championship. I think that should be a hard and fast rule, because what happened in 2022 I don't think should have happened with Ohio State and USC, and I don't think it should ever happen again. Ohio State and USC were both 11-1 at the end of the regular season. Ohio State didn't make the Big Ten championship. USC made the Pac-12 championship. So Ohio State sits home. USC goes and plays Utah in the Big 12 championship. It gets blown out, 47-24. They had some injuries, gave up 533 yards. It was their second loss to Utah of the year. And it was just a bad look. Ohio State jumped them. Sitting idle. Guys, we got a big alert. What's going on here? Okay. Pardon me. Obviously, I'm a Buckeye fan, right? But that's wrong. It was not right for that to happen. You should not be able to sit at home while somebody else goes and plays, runs the risk of injury, and then you jump in front of them because they don't play a good game. The committee's already seen 12 games. They've seen a full body of work from everybody. This should not even factor into their decision. Now, if you're talking about judging two different losers of conference championship games for seeding, fair game. But somebody who sits home and doesn't play should absolutely not have the right to jump ahead of somebody who went and played and got injured and took the risk. And we've already established that the losers of conference championship games, these are the only ones that now have to play 17 games to win the national championship. So they're already playing one more game than everybody else on their path to try to win the national championship. The losers of conference championships risk a lot in playing that game. I don't think that one of those risks should also be, oh yeah, and you can find your way dropping below somebody who sat home. That's not fair. That's not right. That's terrible. Let's take a LSU, for example, this year. They're ranked, let's just say hypothetically, they're ranked number 8, and they're playing Georgia in the SEC championship game. LSU just has one conference loss right now, but they also lost out of conference to USC. And Penn State is ranked number 9. So as it currently stands going into the conference championship game, that is a home playoff game. LSU hosts Penn State. LSU goes into that game and gets blown out. Leaves a sour taste in everybody's mouth. And when the rankings come out, Penn State has jumped LSU. And now LSU, who had to go play in that conference championship game and now has a 17-game road to the national championship, now has to travel to Penn State to play the playoff game instead of at home and play one more game and got beat up in the conference championship game. This is not right. And this should absolutely be a guideline that this can't happen. All right, I've made my spiel. Please check out Columbus Apparel Co. if you want to get any Juckonbucks merch and support our sponsor. Juck20 if you want to check them out and get a discount on any screen printing you might have, as well as MyBookie, the promo code Juck. You can get yourself a 100% deposit match. They'll give you a $10 free casino chip. I don't really like casinos, but put it on 7 on the roulette wheel and spin it. It's the deposit match that's awesome. If you're already playing with a book, promo code Juck, up to $1,000. They're going to match your deposit at MyBookie. So check them out. And appreciate you guys for joining me. Please subscribe and please like the channel. And I'll try to get on some more national stuff as time permits. I'm currently doing every day. I do an Ohio State show, but I also talk a lot of national stuff in that show. But you know, my passion is college football. I want to talk about college football, all college football. I am a Buckeye fan. I don't, like most people, pretend that I'm not something that I am, right? It doesn't keep me from being objective and fair. So if you like the show, please subscribe, and I'll hope to get some more content out for you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you so much. Have a good one. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck? Who is Juck?
Juckonbucks.
Juckonbucks. Juckonbucks?
Juck. Juckonbucks.
My guy Juck. Juckonbucks. My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juckonbucks. Okay.
Juck is junk.
The Juck eyes. The Juck eyes. Juckonbucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.